by the okay. So the first one, where we combine critical discourse analysis, artificial intelligence, and linguistics, and we started designing, developing an algorithm for the detection of radicalization on social media. A little bit later, because this idea of interdisciplinarity is essential to understand what's going on in the world. So we combine again linguistics, artificial intelligence, in this case, political communication, in order to study how populism and democracy are two issues that are necessary to discuss, actually, especially in the environment we are living in right now. Little bit later, and we're still working on the others. Some people from Spanish police forces and Catalan police forces wanted us to apply all our knowledge in artificial intelligence and linguistics with psychologists in order to sort of analyze the perception of Islamic extremism. And when we finished these three projects, we applied for another where we try to discuss or to combine again some sort of ideas and approaches. And in that case, we looked at disinformation and hate speech. I will say something about that later because actually that's what this presentation is about. So we develop an algorithm. Well, do you know that algorithms are quite like the trendy word? It's the trendy word. It's a cool word. So we try to solve problems or accomplishing a task, and we use different mechanism or strategies. In this case, we wanted to do something very simple. This algorithm is called Nutcracker. Perhaps we'll explain later why we use this metaphor. And it is there on this on a server in our university server. It's being used now by different police forces and the European Europol has started using it as well. So we don't know how because it is open access, but they're still there available to anybody who might be interested in using it. I will explain it later. So again, if you want to know more about it, there's some publications where you can read something about that. So just let me know and I will share them with you straight away. This algorithm, or the foundation of this algorithm, is two very simple ideas. The first one is the notion of patterns, which is very, very old-fashioned, probably, especially if you're in linguistics, you know what I mean, and deep relation, which is a very, very efficient and interesting concept. So what do we understand by patterns? If you're doing linguistics, you may know all these people here. So Jacobson, Firth, Sinclair, Leach, Fowler. In different papers and publications, they spoke about the importance of identifying patterns, this idea of the different paradigms that we can see show the trends and the style of somebody's or some particular genre or some particular period, etc. So there's something there which shows who we are. Finally, patterns show some of the traits of our people's identities, if I might use that metaphor. Actually, we wanted to use the metaphor of fingerprint. So we thought at the beginning that we could sort of see in our algorithm, we could detect the fingerprint of radicalization or radical profiles on social media. It's very simple. Well, you might know that generally when someone's speaking on social media, these people show the profile. So we can see the picture, we can see even sometimes their names, which obviously some are not are fake, and we might know where they come from, their age, the gender. Yeah, definitely that's very easy to do because in social linguistics we've been working for the more than I think 60, 70 years now, and we've had, or people in social linguistics have described lots of features that show what our identity, what our profile is. In this particular case, we want to use this concept not just to identify all these characteristics, these inherent attributes of the individual, whoever he, she was, but also something which was essential in radicalization, which was whether they were writing papers or essays, or because we look at different text types, or whether they were posting messages that were used to show or to recruit people, to indoctrinate them, to instruct, give instructions to commit a terror attack, or even to plan this terror attack. And that's why we started looking at Twitter at that time, X now, Facebook, and other platforms. As for deep relations, it's a very beautiful idea. It's a very interesting idea that probably is also something obvious. When you are on social media and you have something like this interaction between user one and user two, this is a surface relation. When user two replies, retweets, or just likes some users one comments, we know that they definitely share ideas, interest of taste, or even the opposite, but there's a connection between them. This is a surface relation. A deep relation is something different. So we have this user three here who is interacting with user two. So again, replying, retweeting, liking their comments. But if they do that, they probably at the same time are sharing ideas, interest, and taste of user one. So with the combination of the notional pattern and the relation, we created, designed, developed this algorithm, this nutcracker. And I might say that this nutcracker is like, I said it's a metaphorical, it's a metaphor, as you obviously know. And we try to like get the nut without breaking it, right? Without breaking it. So that's the idea, very silly or crazy idea, but that's what we try to do. When we compare this algorithm with others, because this is based on this notion, as I said, of this deep relation, etc., its efficiency, efficacy, etc., is quite astonishing according to these people in the artificial intelligence department. So we were lucky enough to identify lots of profiles with with not as much data as necessary in artificial intelligence. We didn't need to use billions of data to detect that, to train our algorithm. Based on that, we applied for another national project. This is the title, like fake news on social media, 3 case studies. And in that case, we wanted to do something new, or at least not that new, but these 3 case studies were basically COVID. Imagine that at that time when we applied for that, we submitted our application. Definitely, COVID was still an issue, and populism is an issue now. And global warming and climate change, well, these are the issues that societies are struggling with, and that are problems by themselves that need there are challenges actually. So what did we want to do? We wanted to apply our algorithm to all these, and not just disinformation. So how much disinformation is spread when we are discussing these 3 topics, but also how sometimes this can lead to hate speech. And identify the target of this hate speech was also another of our aims. So, well, you know what disinformation, fake news is about. Sometimes we don't tell some truth about something, why we're not aware of that. Sometimes we do it intentionally, and sometimes we do it intentionally. And by the way, we tend to harm. So that's the difference. So misinformation, disinformation, information. But definitely what we wanted to see was when there is something which is untrue, what happens on social media. So why? Well, perhaps I have already mentioned that the actual moment, there's so many crises. The war on Ukrainian soil, the war on Gaza, although now it seems to be like sort of stopped in some way, but the migration crisis that it is causing so much trouble and so much pain, and definitely the crisis in Iran, that it's four of the many crises all over the planet. When the world is in a critical moment or at a critical moment going through a critical crisis, what happens is that there's lots of facts that are now faked or that are not presented as they are actually. We are in this critical moment, which is basically informed by post-truth conception. And that when the narratives that we are getting familiar with are basically those where all these, there is like an us, the good people, the clever people, the just people versus the others. In this case, we can include any minority groups that, and there are so many minority groups. Women are a minority group. People with special needs are a minority group. Migrants are a minority group. People from African descent, they are a minority group. So this then is becoming like an issue, and another issue and very often when these groups are tagged, they are presented as sometimes an animal, sometimes an object, sometimes as nothing human. So basically, because of that reason and because of the context, because the atmosphere, this environment, which is filled with so much hatred and so much disinformation, we thought that it would be interesting to analyze people's perception of migration and social media, which is something obvious too. It's something that we weren't inventing the wheel. So how did we do it? So and why did we do it as well? So I mentioned the context before, but look at the text that we found in the millions of texts where we see something like this. 90% of immigrants in Spain receive a 2,000 allowance every month just for arriving. Is this true? No, it is not. Or immigrants collapse the healthcare system because they always go to the doctor for free. Is it true? Well, partially true. Funny how when there's a fight in the neighborhood, foreign names appear in the news. Are they telling something which is untrue? Not really, but there's something like an implicature. And finally, immigration is a tsunami that sweeps away everything we have. Well, by the way, this is a metaphor which, because just its metaphorical nature, it is not truthful at all. So, when we were looking at those texts, and given what I mentioned before regarding the context, this context, all these societal issues, we intended to do different things in this research project, because we are three different individuals with different interests. So as for the algorithm, we wanted to improve our nutcracker, which was initially designed for the detection of radical profiles on social media. We also wanted to develop something like, or design or define something like a face speech catalog or taxonomy. And we also wanted to train our detection model, or a model for detection of hate speech. Because definitely when someone's telling something untrue, finally, it's called the intent to target somebody and harm somebody. And as for migration, we wanted to examine the portrayals of migrants as individuals and migration as an abstraction. And we also wanted to see whether it was possible to identify, classify, and quantify migration-related disinformation across platforms. So how did we do it, and which data did we use? Well, this is perhaps what is more interesting, because I think that the actual strategy we used was probably successful, because we understood that we had to follow this sort of little by little analysis. So the first stage was very simple. So there was an expert annotator with a different multilingual data collection. So we had different languages. or German, English, Spanish, Catalan, Basque, and we collected all this data, considering especially disinformation only text connected with climate change. We just wanted to use it as a pilot study. For that purpose, we use Nutcracker. This is how it looks like, and we use just to show you very simply the actual beginning. So we use both the names of the disinformers and the hashtags they used, both in English and Spanish and in the other languages I mentioned before. So when we finished this first stage, we had lots of data already, and we were able to see sort of some patterns that were frequent when disinformers were speaking about this particular topic. After that, we used a new platform, which is Label Studio. And with Label Studio, we could do different things. So we used keywords, so in keyword analysis, that were very frequent in those tests that we collected before, regarding migration, immigration, migrants, etc. And with this keyword analysis, the expert annotator started discussing and identifying different parameters, which were the ones that were more frequent in those texts. And we, at the same time, she could sort of see which discrepancy strategies were more pervasive in all of those texts. This was some of the questions we had to answer when we use Label Studio. So is it related to migration? Is related to women? Well, you may not know this, but when we're looking at hate speech, one of the most hated targets in Europe, it's women. So we needed to know exactly whether women were present or mentioned in those posts, whether it was in Spanish, if in our case, whether it was migration in Spain or in Spanish-speaking country, if there was discussed like in an abstraction or just mentioning a particular individual, whether the post was more an opinion, or it was a news item, etc. So we have to answer all these questions. And when it comes to hate speech, we ask whether, or we answer the question, does this post contain any hate speech? Which type is it? Which is the target? Age, gender, ideology, etc. So when we finished the second stage, we kept doing tagging now of a small amount of data. That is one of the most important characteristics of our algorithm. We don't need so much data. And the expert annotator started training a non-expert annotator. This is an applied physicist who knew little about what we were doing, but he needed to know exactly what we wanted him to do. So he had to sort of answer all these questions I showed before. Sometimes when the expert and the non-expert annotator were in agreement, we did something which is probably what you might imagine, but this was something we started doing before ChatGPT was so popular. So we actually ask an LLM, which are not accidentally useful; they are very useful. And imagine that we have this text, which translated in something like this. So we ask with all our patterns and strategies, etc., and the answers were definitely good, especially when there wasn't any agreement or there were some doubts regarding the agreement between Fernando and myself. So the findings are quite simple. And as I said, we didn't invent the wheel, so we just proved what we expected. So first of all those tweets basically were opinions, and opinions that very often not unexpected at all, were negative if we consider the sentiment of these posts, were very negative in terms of they were criticizing, harassing, or mistreating the target in the past. When we look at disinformation, we saw that there was a lot of disinformation, obviously, when the disinformer was speaking about, or they were speaking their minds, or when they combined. Sometimes they used, they said something they thought, they expressed their opinion, but they used like a news item to support their views on whatever it was. And yeah, when we look at disinformation and hate speech, definitely when there was opinion or opinion and a news item, there was lots of disinformation, which was not unexpected. What happened regarding the algorithm? So when we compare it to other fake news detectors, and because there are not so many hate speech detectors, but when we compare to fake news detectors, it was very successful in terms of accuracy, precision, and recall, and yeah, on F1 too. And again, when we kept working with it, we saw that our algorithm got better and better and better. But this is something you can read in the article I mentioned before. As for the other aims that we intended, so like for instance, the design or definition or description or a face speech, the catalog, well, we could. So we saw some strategies which were very frequent in our text, like abbreviation, the antimodality, emotional language, evaluation, diminutive, etc. So this was some of the ones that were more frequent when some people were disinforming. And when we look at these captive strategies, it's true that the most frequent one was metaphor. So people tended to say something untrue through metaphorical utterances. As for hate speech, well, I might say that we use these categories, severe, strong, moderate, which now I'm not very happy about, or we're not very happy about, but definitely at that time we thought there was like a decline. And in this decline, we saw that there's like comparative, diminutive, euphemisms, humor or sarcasm, etc. So these are the most outstanding strategies used when someone was harming somebody based on their nationality, age, gender, sexual orientation, and definitely the legal status. So what about the construal of this migrant or migration? So we saw that the most important target was legal status, followed by nationality and age, which is not, again, something that, at least in the Spanish context, was new or was something like, oh my goodness, this is quite unexpected. And then we saw that generally there was lots of lies regarding, again, more lies than hard truths, especially regarding ethnicity. There are many other strategies that you will read in the paper if you might like. Sometimes we found examples like this. So immigration isn't a crime, but generally, and this is what makes us lots sort of scared or worried or concerned, we saw something like this. So that's how easy it would be to stop the invasion of illegals that's killing us. So there's lots of metaphors, as I said before. But sometimes we find something like this. When they set up a center for unaccompanied migrant minors, so they use lots of times the acronym, which is in Spanish, in Spain, it is now an illegal term to use because it's used to harass someone whose legal status is at stake. They also use square quotes, which is very frequent, those children, so they don't believe that these people are minors. They also use capitalization very often to cause some emotional reaction, to show their anger, to show their frustration. And definitely there's lots of implicature, which is quite interesting because this is an issue that needs lots of analysis, given that it is maybe very context related. And yeah, sometimes there is ellipses because, again, like implicature, this allows the reader to sort of figure out what the person who's writing means. And sometimes it's very useful because you might say, oh, this is just a joke. I am just joking. Don't worry, I'm not harming anybody. I don't intend to harm anybody. In a context, this is a context where some newspapers claim that 70% of the population on the globe are against migration. We might say that there are certain conclusions that they're still there and we should consider. So regarding the algorithm, well, we were lucky enough to improve, we think, our algorithm. We could sort of see a hate speech catalog without considering previous research. And then we look at the other research, we saw that our findings were in line with them and proved that there were other categories they had not been included in those taxonomies. And yeah, we were able to train our hate speech detection model and seems to work quite nicely. As for migration, we saw that, yeah, migrants and migration itself are portrayed in a very negative light, where people are invaders, they are illegal, they are harmful, they are beasts, they are not human. But to be honest, the last objective, the fact that we could analyze other platforms, it was not possible because of different reasons. This is a very time-consuming activity, but not just because of that. You know that now we can use very few data from some social media platforms, and that meant that we are still working on some of them, but not all of them. So this is us. This is Plan Hate Speech and Fake News on social media. And Juan Luis, Aritz, and myself are really happy that you might be interested in our research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Encarna, for this fascinating talk. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you. So we have some minutes for questions. We have around 8 minutes, if that's okay. I'm not sure if she would hear us. I mean, especially if you're based there. So perhaps you have to approach and ask the question here. I will start, Encarna. It's very interesting, because, yeah, well, we were interested as well to learn about your interdisciplinary team and approach. How was to work with a mathematician, data analyst, and so on? How was your experience? Yeah, because in this case, I'm interested, yeah, coming from language studies, different epistemologies and understandings of language as well, which is quite different depending on where, your tradition, where you come from. So did you encounter any issues? So yeah, if you can explain us.
It is a beautiful, beautiful question, because actually you learn a lot about how to make knowledge and grow. Uh, Before meeting them, I was working in my office, and I read my text and analyzed them. And whatever I found out was something I considered a contribution, just